I will take the phone, and I feel like smoking a cigarette. So I'm gonna cigarette, man. How's it going, everybody? I'm not sure people are gonna pop in, man. I think there is an outlet over here. I just want to see who pops in. I doubt it's gonna be anybody. Life keeps on testing, man. Life is gonna keep on life, and it's supposed to be a guy out here. I don't want the police to show up. I'm on my new phone, check it out. You guys can see my face. You guys can see my beautiful face. I don't think a lot of people are gonna pop in. Something tells me, maybe if I have a breakthrough, let's get to all messages. I'll hang out, we'll see what happens. Let me know who's in the chat. I don't know. Maybe if I put something really important. I played cards with a bunch of drunk teenagers today. I'm outside a bus in a random town. A random ass small town where the kids all say the N-word and they're like, is that cool? I'm like, I guess. What's up, Robbie girl? How we doing tonight? The number of views are not relative to how many people are actually in the chat. YouTube's been fucking up lately. I'm sitting out a small town. I'm about to smoke a cigarette and chill out. I'm trying to check in with my regulars, see how people are feeling. Maybe we'll solve some major mental health problems that people have. Maybe we'll wake some people up to a higher level of thinking in the simulation. Maybe we'll just chill and smoke a cigarette and see what happens. Life's been really crazy living on the outside. I've been homeless for 10 years since I was 14. I have been homeless since I was 14 years old. And I've met many spiritual leaders that teach thousands and thousands of people, but I got to meet them very casually. Like they're my friends. I met Martin Cabello, you know, the guy that went, my brother Josh killed himself and his 2 kids. I met Courtney Hunt. I met Elliot Hulse. I met Ray William Johnson. I met Owen Cook. I met Justin Waller. I met GG33. I met John Zerka. I met C.416. I met Spizzy Spose. I met Chris Webby. I met Annoyed. I met MGK. Things got any better lately? Well, right now we have 2 moons in the sky, which will never happen again. Space is so like chaotic, right? How is it that there's a giant moon-sized asteroid that's it's going to go 1 revolution around the Earth and then shoot back to where it came from, and it's going to go right with the moon perfectly? And I think it's a full moon. I think Georgia just had this giant chemical explosion that's covering the whole state, right? So relative to that, things are going pretty good. I didn't have my phone for a while. Something happened with the hurricane. When I woke up, I just felt better. And then it was so obvious to me all the different habits that I was running, so I was able to kind of think about other things, which really helped to put things in perspective. I realized so many of my problems are not mine at all. It was like I had a conflict with somebody else. I had like an altercation with someone, and I had like a read on them, like I developed like a character of who I thought they were based on their actions, and then that stuck with me. So then when I got degraded out here, I didn't realize that because those guys were still kind of in my head, I was ruminating. I didn't realize I was becoming those guys. So I'd go back through my videos and I'd see the way that I talk and the way that I act was exactly what I didn't like about other people. And that I had been kind of so isolated and driven far from myself. that I completely lost. That's why it was so easy to lose touch with everything, because I had no grounded sense of self, and I got that back without a phone, biking 60 miles. I think I have some really thank you. It was because of a subscriber. I've had a subscriber consistently giving me like 10% probably of their weekly earnings. And that pretty much got me everything that I have. So I'm really grateful, and that's why I continue to make content. That's pretty much the only reason, is that it's offering some value to people. The point is that when I talk about tarot readings, what I'm saying is that I've found people online that have been doing it for such a long time. They're very good at it. And what they do in these readings is they'll describe what they're seeing. And many times what they're seeing is what I'm seeing with my eyes. So like I'll be sitting here looking at a train station, and then a couple minutes go by, maybe I'm sitting by myself, I'll go for a walk, I'll sit down and open my YouTube, and it will be a video from 8 months ago. I opened the video from 8 months ago, and the tarot reader is describing exactly what I'm seeing with my eyes while I'm listening to the video. And then it tells me things about what I'm going through that I hadn't recognized, like certain thoughts that had kept coming into my head that I was just kind of throwing away because I was so focused on whatever I was stuck in. And then that kind of reaffirms for me certain things, and when I hold that in, it seems like my whole experience gets crazier. At least I know crows are smart, I know crows aren't inherently evil, but for me it's like I really do get followed every day, and that can be really taxing on your mental health. That can be really hard. To get to a certain level of peace and clarity where you can work through your problems, and then to have that stir, whatever frequency that sets off, stir all the crows in a town, and all the crows get together and sit above you and scream at you, and you feel like this dominance game where you have to like argue with the crows, and then you're in public so you can't seem crazy, but you know that you're in a dominance battle with these animals. And then if you lose, if you submit, it feels like everything that I just worked for, all the good emotions, all the things that were kind of attached to me, my self-worth, my self-esteem, my character, the things that made me individual, like the Lego pieces or Bionicle pieces I had put on, the clothes I was wearing spiritually, it feels like that gets eaten. And then the crows change tone and they literally start laughing. So for me, after 4 years of it happening, and I've had psychics and spiritual teachers come and tell, like, we go through the same thing where we're both understanding what's happening, and he kind of tells me, yeah, I don't really know why they do it, but they do it. I definitely believe that it happens. And then I've just noticed that the same time that the crows get activated, the crackheads and the cops get activated. It's not weird for me to run into 3 or 4 pedophiles in a week. And then the pedophiles and the creeps, the cops, these people cyclically, in the past, they would cyclically show the same exact behaviors. Their responses were exactly the same. The sequence of events that I would go through in a day where I'm working things out inside me, like my own internal emotional processes, to have the outside be triggering me and affecting me sequentially, cyclically, the same way, the same exact time, like I'm going through the same experience like Groundhog Day. And it doesn't matter the body. It'll be different people that show up. So thinking about the cause of that really puts you at a level that you can't really, it gets really difficult to go have normal conversations. That can drive you really crazy. But at the end of that, you know, it's a journey that the further I go down that, what you call like delusion and schizophrenia, when you go down that trying to figure out the theory of everything, that's when the tarot readers show up. That's when my world gets magical. That's when I find $2,000 bikes, or I find a coin on the ground that's worth $2,000, or I wake up and there's a bee that's passed out on my chest and it's for warmth and I have to keep the bee alive. And then for the next 2 years, every time I'm feeling down, a bee will land on my leg and just look at me and then fly away, or sometimes a horsefly will be bothering me and then a bee will tackle it out of the sky, since I kept that bee alive. Or like a higher level of that is that there are people with the same names and the same motifs and themes, like the same type of, like, say, like one of the biggest girlfriends I had in my life, her name was Chloe, and she had a specific look. Like my type was like dark hair, dark eyes, the way her face was shaped, the literal tone of her skin. Like if you took the color picker on Photoshop and picked the color of her skin, and she was Puerto Rican, but it was like a specific hue that I really liked. 6 months later, I'm in a city far away. A girl with the same name, same hair type, same color eyes, same color skin, named Chloe. But she's a police officer, and she's bothering me the same way the cops had been bothering me for a week. Then she's got tattoos of all these things that were really meaningful to me. Like she had the bee tattoo, she had like a certain playing card tattoo that was really meaningful for me, but for anyone else, it's 1 out of 52. There's no real reason for anyone to pick that if they hadn't gone through what I went through and had that be such a meaningful thing for me. And she's just got it on her arm that she used to shake my hand. And then at the end of her arm, she's got the Irish Clod, which is the tattoo that I have that I got when I was 17. And all she said was just trying to guide me to a certain place, like try to get me to go leave this random ass small town and move back to a city. And then when I went to the city, it was like the biggest journey of my life. It's like a story that would make billions in the box office. So to have obvious things that seem like a Truman Show, and it's all in response to the things in my consciousness that nobody should know about, that's not really schizophrenic. That's just paying attention and then stacking up experiences and trying to find the correlation. And the more I correlate, the more vivid my experience seems, and I seem to get actual wisdom that I end up sharing with people. So I don't think I'm doing nothing. I don't think I'm a loser. But I think that when you go down that road, you see so many more vivid things that you can do that are very difficult. Like once you understand that, everything becomes so much more meaningful. Every moment does. Everything that you do, everything that you say, like all the different nuances with the different bird sounds and the different bugs and the sequence of how it goes and the song that nature's playing, you pick up on a lot easier, and it gets really overwhelming to have violent responses to your positive thoughts. And I would just persevere for years, like since I was born pretty much. I just didn't recognize that I was doing it. So like in terms of how I'm doing better. And I think in response, it seems that my environment is getting worse. The crow attacks are getting more vivid. The tarot readers are saying it. They're seeing my life, and they're blowing it out of proportion how vivid and special what they're seeing is. They're getting overwhelmed by whatever vision they're having, and they're telling me to keep going. But then I hung out with 2 kids today that were drunk, 2 teenagers, and we just passed the nicotine back and forth, and we tried to play cards, but one kid got really paranoid about a kid down the road and had to leave. And they were obviously like, because they were drunk, every now and then they would get possessed. Whatever darkness is in the police, whatever darkness is in the crows, the thing that I can recognize a tone change, I can see in my mind, in my imagination, whether that's the spirit realm or whether that's just what I've developed from building Legos my whole life and making music and living as like a maladaptive daydreamer. For whatever reason, the same way that they spoke, in the same focus I could pick up on, I knew that it had been like a shift where their mind had gone to a place and something else was kind of channeling through, and the things that it said triggered me in a way that's like, obviously I'm still here, trying to make the whole situation negative, trying to kill the vibe immediately, trying to like seed certain paranoias and certain fears in the back of the kid's mind. And then the kid revealed he had tons of cuts on his arm and he had been cutting himself. And the thing like triggered his arm to move in front of my face, so I saw all the cuts. Shit like that is like what's around me. That stuff can drive anybody crazy. But I'm still persevering. I found this bike, my other bike tire popped So I'm trying to get that fixed, but then coincidentally, as soon as one bike broke, I found another bike. What's up, James? I'm glad to see you. It's been a while. I found this bike. So I'm in between. I'm like 30 miles from the capital, 30 miles from where I'm going. And I'm going to try to get this bike up there, take the bike back, or take the bus back, get my other bike. And then on Tuesday, I got a cab company to do me a favor and get me another 60 miles down south and maybe even back so I can go to Vivek's cabin and pick up some of my lost mementos that I had left in the cabin. I'm still making music. All the money that I saved up from donations, I put towards a phone, and I got a phone. I got a warranty on it. And they had good deals on food, so I got a bunch of food for a good deal. I did buy the Domino's pizza as like a goodbye to all the homeless people that I saw the past couple months. I'm just, where I'm at, seeing that there's a sequence of events and everything, is the majority of the population controlled? Is everybody kind of distracted and driven out of their minds by technology and the Matrix, which is like technically be a system, like a higher intelligence, like an AI that's around us at all times? Is that thing constantly keeping us kind of in a state where we're not capable of kind of opening our third eye, being more present to the moment, and being in this type of spiritual realm that I break through into all the time? Is that what's attacking me? Because that's a crazy thought, that's a dangerous thought, and that would make that'd make everything a lot worse, because then your purpose would be a lot deeper. Everything that I would do would be more vivid. I'd be trying to have conversations with people, and I would be at war with them. Which is, I think, that specific message, like that packet of information, I think someone that watches the channel, the husband of the of Heather, just posted on his Facebook saying that he follows Jesus religiously, and he says that it's a literal war every minute of every day. And he's doing pretty well for himself. I don't know if crows are evil, but they're treating me very poorly. I don't know what I'm doing that's making the crows mad. They seem to be acting evil. They're getting aggressive. The crows are even angry. The crows were like, earlier today, they came at me really hard, like the entire town's worth of crows. So there was like 50, probably because they congregate now that it's colder. But for whatever reason, they were a lot. This summer they were playful. It was like going back and forth, like playing tennis, where they were trying to dominate the space, and I'd be like, stop. And then they'd be like, he can't shoot us, so let's just keep fucking with him and see how crazy we can make him. And it was bad. It was really bad. That's why a lot of the stuff sounded really depressed. Like every time that I was on lives and I was like struggling to speak, it was because I felt tethered. Like they had chained me up with a bunch of stuff that whenever I thought, it was like feeling trapped, and it felt like they were farming me. So that's how it was in the summer. So when I tell you that it was 10 times worse this morning, it was so bad, and they followed me so many different places that I had to leave and go 30 miles north. And then as soon as I got to town, these crows swarmed me immediately. Like I must be emanating something that they can pick up on that's causing them. I mean, what triggered here is I laid down in a riverbed, and the sun was directly in front of me. I woke up and started feeling love again, which I hadn't really felt since 2020. This certain peace of mind that I haven't felt since 2020 came out of the sun. I was like connecting to a higher frequency. I was seeing things in my mind, and it wasn't evil things like demons reaching for me or tormented souls that are sitting in an apartment like 2 blocks away, and I'm picking up on that person over there. It was like something was showing me something, like an image that I'm sure if I uncover, like opened up a lot of positive emotions for me. And then immediately the crows swarmed me for like 20 minutes. No, like an hour. And I recorded the whole thing. For tarot readings, I don't know if you were here before, I go off what the algorithm gives me. And then when I watch the video I really wait for them to have this moment where they're picking up on something. So like we're talking, and then all of a sudden I get inspired. Something seems really important to say, something feels really important for me to do. And then now I'm learning, like, try to look deeper, kind of question where that comes from. I know for me personally, it seems like on 11 days, and the closer it is to a full moon, and on full moons, it's easier for me to see where it's coming from. And usually what I notice is that all the relationships I'd built in the community, whether it's an AI that's kind of merging with humanity, or it's just we have a higher awareness of spiritual interactions, and we're kind of coming to terms with that we evolved from monkeys, and that monkeys have that 100 monkey theory where one monkey on an island 50 miles away learns how to clean a rock a certain way and like use a tool, and then suddenly all the monkeys on all the different islands do it immediately. As soon as that one monkey learns that new skill, all those monkeys learn that new skill at once, and they didn't have to speak to each other, it didn't have to show anybody anything. That was just one study, and it founded the 100 monkeys theory. So whether maybe we have a 100 monkeys theory called a collective consciousness, and we're just getting more aware of that, how our relationships, or maybe just that was normal for past generations and we've kind of diluted ourselves with technology. So a lot of us are moving back into that awareness. For whatever reason, I know when I go to small towns all the time, the most negative person in the town has a problem with me, and they usually will lie to police, and the police are usually really aggressive and negative, like overly so. And because I pick up on that so much, it becomes like this huge battle. And whatever they do to me, when I have that full moon experience, I realize more awareness about what they had done to me, how I had kind of lost touch with myself because I'd been kind of checked, and they kind of locked me out of certain things, and I hadn't had that awareness yet. And that there's a lot of people that don't travel all the time are all playing those types of games. So with the tarot readers, I know if they get inspired, I can see an obvious change in behavior. Sometimes you can even see like their face twitches, like their whole literal face will start to twitch to the new information that's coming in. And then what they say is usually extremely impactful for me. Like all of a sudden they say something and it lights up my whole experience. My whole insides light up. I feel inspired and I feel kind of validated for something that I thought was crazy. Like something reminds them. And then they say like, oh, I have something for a 33 life path, Sagittarius. People say that tarot readings are just another avenue that demons, like people that try to take you away from God, kind of like the enemies of this game, they use tarot readers to kind of hop you in and convince you of BS, because the more you're committed to that, the less bandwidth you have to inquire about other things that might lead you to a greater awakening. So I take it with a grain of salt, but I mean, when I watch a video of a guy that I know is a nice guy, and he says like, I see you're surrounded by trees, you're on a railroad track right now. Let me make sure I didn't end the live. He says, I see you on a railroad track. You're full of green, something green about you. I see the fairies, something about fairies. You might be Irish. And then he says, okay, I'm seeing this giant anointing, this immense anointing from God. I see this huge mission. Whatever you're doing, you need to take the risk. You need to go for it. That's crazy. I couldn't live the life that you're living, but that's crazy. And then he goes off like for 5 minutes about different aspects of what I've been through, where I've had trouble explaining it to anybody and having anybody understand anything about my experience. To have it shown to me like that after like 6 months of me feeling completely alone and isolated, and like that God just stopped answering. To have like a video from 6 months ago tell me about exactly what I'm going through right now. But at the same time, like I definitely I think most spiritual people wind up as pagans, and then I don't think paganism is necessarily morally righteous. Close encounters with, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna do my checkup. I'm not from here, so I don't know how hot this area gets at night. How is everybody else? I'm looking for regulars. I'm trying to see who pops in. I'll just keep going off if you want. Someone said they might come back and play cards with me tonight. So I'm waiting on that. I will sit here under the light. I'm not going to smoke. I might smoke. Do people care if I smoke? Let me do a poll. I'm going to do a poll real quick. Can I smoke? Can I smoke? Look at that. I called my mom before the hurricane because I had felt this big anointing. I want to call it an anointing. I felt this big blessing, which means that the experiences that I'm about to make are very important, like the choices I'm about to make. So I know when that happens, I have distractions that try to lead me astray. When I'm full of emotions, I have things that try to ruin those emotions a lot. Like as my potential for more happens, seemingly outside enemies show up. And they're usually lying, like whatever they're doing, whatever they're selling me, whatever they're trying to say to me is usually BS, and it takes a lot of mental bandwidth and focus to go down that road to uncover the truth that they were bullshitting the whole time and find that underlying emotion, which is usually jealousy, and which is usually some type of ego thing where they're trying to put me down and use me as a step stool. In some cases before, like when I had a girlfriend, a lot of times I had people coming into my life because they wanted to be around my girlfriend, or they wanted to understand how I get women. Sometimes they wanted to learn my skills and pretend to be me. So I just had a lot of snakes like that. So the other day, right after the hurricane, before I lost my phone in the hurricane, I had like 6 people come into my life in like a span of 10 minutes. So I opened my phone and I had 10 notifications from people that I had kind of left behind in the past that were trying to build a relationship back with me again. And I tried to like do my best to be positive and everything, but they led me down the same road again. And then in these experiences where I'm talking to people like that, and I'm like making full eye contact, I'm fully present to the moment, and I'm just kind of watching and observing how their behavior changes and how they respond to me, who's learning skills about being present and being positive and holding this light. And I see them like, so like I'll be looking at someone in the eyes, and then suddenly I'm like, I want to say inquisitive, like curious, almost like what's going on behind you? Try to get a feel of their emotional state behind. I think that's called using discernment. And then suddenly it's like something takes over, they twitch, and then they start to talk and act like I acted on my live streams. I like looked deeper behind the mask to see what was really guiding these people. Why were they coming into my life? What was the underlying emotion? What suddenly made them want to reach out to me? What was happening? Like, what's all the different stuff going on in their story? Part of being spiritual and like learning psychic abilities is to be, all the psychic is someone that's aware of the present moment at higher levels, and they're able to relay back what they need to hear at that time. So I tried to do that, and then pretty much every one of them that I spoke to immediately lit a cigarette, then immediately started looking at me and talking to me the way that I was talking on the live streams a couple months ago. So it was kind of like I had gotten my karma. I got to experience what it was like on the other end, to see how I was acting. And I didn't like it at all. So it makes me weary of the cigarette. I know it's not necessarily the cigarette, but it's like the intentions behind it. I think that I honestly think that most of this was to waste my time. I think that I want to see it as a challenge. All the insects stopped. All the bugs stopped at once. and the heater stopped. All the noise stopped at once. That's weird. And now there are strangers here. Janelle, you might have. You might have, man. That was weird. All the bugs stopped at once. What's up? I don't know. Let me see what the poll says. Yeah, they said it's fine if I smoke. I don't know. It makes it epic, right? It makes the whole story cooler, right? To have conflict. It makes it scarier. Because if the crickets were active over here, all the way over here, I wouldn't be so paranoid about noises, and that might not draw my attention away and my mental bandwidth that I was focusing on being positive. And whatever, supposedly because I'm a 33 life path born on the 11th is the gateway to higher and lower dimensions, like how a tree takes from the roots and from the sun. And my name means the oldest tree, the tree of life. And then the 33 life path makes it so AI says being a 33 life path is being like a tree where you grow into the entire world, and whatever you're bringing with you is whatever you've accumulated while you grew through many lifetimes. So that whatever essence that has when I start to feel good and feel freely creative and should be focused on my internal processes to kind of heal myself and make art and be funny and make jokes and live life to the fullest. I seem to have tons of distractions that trigger all the traumas that I have about feeling powerless, where people had abused me and taken my power away from me. And that happens so sequentially in a day, where I can recognize the feeling that I have inside and see how the outside responds to it, that it doesn't really affect me. And I'm able to articulate it. Yeah. Sometimes, one time I had someone that was wearing an alien mask follow me through a town. Someone put on an alien mask and followed me for 12 hours one day, and he would just hide behind poles like that, where he was just standing there. And then I got more awareness of it because the crows were screaming at me, so I'm like, okay, something's happening. So I followed where the bugs were going, the tiny little mosquitoes, because I follow it right to left. If I'm on the right path doing the right thing, they go right in front of my face, right to left. If I'm doing the wrong thing, left to right. So I followed the right to left, and it brought me around a bend, around to the other thing. I turned around, and there was a full alien head just like that. It was a guy in a mask. And it was like 10 minutes. That happened 10 minutes after I was sitting alone, and hold on. Yeah. So I'm itching because I'm feeling the whatever energy that left behind. Ralph Smart calls it the emotional drive-by. Yeah, my family's Rh negative blood on both sides. So I have, if eyes are like the windows to the soul, maybe I can show you. Can you see? It's hard to see, but I have a gold ring around my iris that changes how yellow it is. Like some people just have hazel eyes, but with my dad and I might be able to get a picture of my father and I'll post it in the community tab. Sometimes my father and I light up and it's bright golden. And that makes me think that, I think maybe that's why people are always trying to get in front of my face. So like, say, here's a good example, and you can find it in a couple other videos. I'll be standing like this. I'll be just standing here and I'll be staring straight ahead. You can find it in the last video that I'm uploading right now. In there, I called someone stupid for telling me that I'm brave. I was not talking to Heather. Heather commented I'm brave all the time. I don't want her to think that I was talking about her. So, say I'm looking this way. Or we'll just use, imagine this, but it's like the railroad, so it's really far away. and I'm just standing there. It could be an open field, it could be anywhere, and I'm staring straight ahead to meditate, something will walk directly in front of my face, very far away, and just stop. And they'll just pause. So if I'm like Sagittarius, constantly flowing in this good energy, something guided them, and their heads are always down like this. You guys cannot probably see it if you just look outside long enough. If you go sit out your window and look at the public walking around, you'll see people that walk like this, and they're very slow moving. And then they'll stop, they'll twitch, they'll get up, and they'll move like this, pacing back and forth, putting their head up like this, doing energy battles. I have tons of shit like that. Now I've learned to look behind me, and almost always when that happens, where there's something in front of me blocking me, there's a crow directly behind me. Cricket has started. There we go, the cricket's back. After that guy, whoever was here that was standing right there, that walked over here and just stood behind that pillar right there, when he got into his car, as soon as the car door shut, the cricket's back up. I was always a realist. I was always really intelligent, I think. I was always philosophical, always trying to make systems that when I talked to kids that were my age, they wouldn't really understand it. But then when I got a little bit older and I talked to kids that were a couple years below me, it really helped them, and it like made the next years of their life a lot better, and they went on to be managers and have pretty girlfriends and all this stuff. And that was what was fun for me, was trying to think about systems. I wish that I hadn't gotten so traumatized and distracted, because that skill was essential if I wanted to be a Twitch streamer or a YouTuber, or when crypto blew up. Now it seems like we're kind of evolved past all those games, and life is getting so real that the only way to express that systematic stuff, now that AI is here, is to live life outside. So that's what I chose. I looked into the future kind of a couple of years ago, and I realized that eventually AI will get so big that the most meaningful thing that you can do in life is to be outside, away from technology, and to do things in real life, where everyone was showing off what they could do online. Like Aiden Ross was blowing up, Kai Cenat was blowing up, Andrew Tate was blowing up. IRL livestream didn't really exist. So I put all my focus into living outside. I doubled down on it. I wanted to do live streams, but my phone was fucked up at the time. I think during COVID, I didn't do live streams because now that I'm looking back, I see that there was so much mental illness in that public housing building I was in. And it seemed like all the stuff that I thought were my problems were me processing the problems of the people in the area. Now that I've left that and I can look back at how I was acting relative to how I was acting before I went into that place, I can see that it really seeped through like osmosis. And all the issues that I was having was the issues of the people that had so far gone like decades of living in Section 8 with problems that never got fixed. So it was really vivid and intense for me. Sometimes I would get up and I wouldn't be able to move, and I'd be frozen in place, stuck, and I feel all these black fear, darkness around me, trapped, and my girlfriend would cry, and she didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do, so I would just power through it, and it took all my effort to walk over to the fridge to get some comfort food, and I would boost myself, and I'd watch funny videos, and I was constantly recycling my memories and trying to get back into myself because I wanted to be the best experience possible for my girlfriend. And then she was just a piece of garbage. She was someone that, it was one of those things when you look deeper, you realize that there's some spiritual thing that's wrong. And that triggers them, and they usually get violent. It was something that was happening there. Like I wasn't aware that I was being programmed of every second. That everyone that I was around was like subconsciously feeding me bad belief systems and making sure that I didn't find my power so I could just start making jokes like I used to before the accident. I had people that were incessant on keeping me in the state where I was the broken archetype, and they were the savior archetype. And then they were becoming more like me every day. I cut them off for 6 months. I saw my girlfriend after 6 months. She started pumping gas. We were going somewhere to drive, to just talk. And she was like, people around town are saying I'm a lot, like, man, that's something Casey would say. Like, man, you're a lot like Casey, aren't you? And I felt the guy got hit with this huge truck that's like, oh, she just revealed that she was stealing my energy the whole time and that there was no love there. She was siphoning my consciousness. And then I looked deeper and I could literally see in her spirit, I could see all the different guys she was talking to. I could see them like clear as day. I could see their faces. I could see their intentions. I could see the psionic sexual stuff that's going on. I could just feel it all instantly. So then while she looked away, I went on her phone and I just opened her Snapchat, and all the guys that I saw were the top names that she was talking to daily, that she had streaks with. And she's a Gemini, so I saw that as Sagittarius, I just want to do one thing and push that one thing out to the world. And she was a Gemini that's like an explosive thing that deals with many social relationships. And she has all these guys on her phone that have obvious mental health issues and no positive masculine role models. And they had nothing. They were like the complete opposite of everything that I was learning on my self-help journey. Uncovering truth and building systems in place, mindsets and paradigms to embed in your consciousness to help to be a better person. I was cooking up the sauce, and she was taking the sauce and then throwing it to the worst people in town that for some reason she was attracted to. And she was at one point the prettiest girl in town. The only girls that were better looking were complete whores that were like spiritually so gone. I didn't even want to be around them. Like I'd walk past them in the hallway and I didn't know anything about spirituality, but something about them, even though they were so attractive, I was like, I don't want to be anywhere near that. And I gravitated towards these girls that were just as good looking, but they weren't a part of that group that was having orgies all the time. There were groups of kids in my class that were running trains and shit like that. And then there were girls that were weird that liked poetry in Vermont and they liked to hike. I just naturally gravitated towards the better women, which is cool because now they're doing really well for themselves. It's just this one girl, and now it's been known that her mom was turned out to be a prostitute, even though she was beautiful and her grandma was rich. Her dad was a drug lord for Latin Kings, and her mother was a prostitute that he pimped. So there's a lot of darkness there. But for whatever reason, I think they say isn't it, for any spiritual people, how long do you think that a sexual bond lasts after you stop having sex? How long do you think that tether that you create together, how long is that there? Because when I'm sitting here like this, I'll suddenly feel attacked. And the attacks are in the style, colors, and personality of a certain guy that's been stalking me for a long time and was really jealous of me when I was dating this girl, and then eventually they got together. And then he would show up drunk to my house a lot. So I feel him attacking me a lot. And then I'll look and they're back together for a couple days and then they'll break up again. So it's like the closer these guys are to her life, the more I'm like fed the sauce of these people. And it seems like the world wants to make sure that I don't realize that. Because it seems like, do you guys feel like if you feel spiritually attacked, does it go away after you're aware of it? Or does it get worse when you become aware of it? And now I will smoke. Those are some big questions. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go through all these. Bring the bad vibes. James said, happy Libra. Earning my badges for real. Yeah, when I earn whatever badges I earn when I go through the cycle, I usually get rewarded. I usually get a cool bike, or I get a cool coat, or I get a cool connection to another culture. I'm able to make a cool song. It's definitely returned to me in some ways, but there's a lot more that goes on to it. Of the bloodline, I'm Rh negative on both sides. That technically means I'm an alien, supposedly. All the riches, like the Rockefellers, are all Rh negative, and they're all 33 life paths. So coincidentally, I'm a 33 life path Rh negative. And then all the other 33 life paths that are what people call the owners of the world have the same life path and blood type, coincidentally, and it's the rarest blood type and it's the rarest life path. So for whatever reason, the cricket is back. Right when I was reading Welcome Back, Brave Cricket, it got loud. The most meaningful thing you can do is spend time with genuine people. I was saying more as an art form. Like if I wanted to look back at the story of my life, what would I have wanted to have done? And I feel most comfortable as like the gladiator in the lion pit. So maybe that's why I keep having to be trapped and fight things, because that feels like my element. That's all I've ever done is be trapped in a room and have to creatively solve my way to get out. We live in a time of opposites. They want fake power. Rockefeller fucked humanity. Is it Rockefellers or Rothschilds? They said it's 100 families. I don't know the names of all the families. I think the one that my dad went on the yacht with every year was one of those families. That his fellow ski instructor was a boat captain, so he got to go on the yachts that the captain would drive, the big giant sailboats, and it was for the DuPont family. I met them a couple times. They didn't seem inherently evil, but he didn't seem all there. He was old. It seems like he was at one point very evil and very intelligent with power games, but all that darkness had kind of left him in his old age. It wasn't living around him. It wasn't attached to him, but I could see that he was kind of waiting for it to attach, like he had set the magnet up to attract that darkness. And he kept throwing toys in the bottom of a really, really deep pool when I was young, and he kept telling me to dive all the way down, and then he told me that's life. Life is diving very, very deep for toys. Or life was that the DuPont family told me to do something and I do it. I don't know. It is hard to find genuine people. It's hard to find people that are aware enough to be genuine, because it's a huge mental battle with everything that you went through in a day, everything that's going on around you in the present moment, everything that you're struggling with inside, your mental fortitude, your brain power, how brave you are to make decisions, to be able to find and house your authentic self. People say that's the whole point of life, and some people it takes their entire life to figure that out. So finding genuine people versus finding genuine people, like people that are people, is very hard. But that's a very autistic, spiritual way to think about it. You can just hang out with people, and for the most part, like, I think that's why the human spirit is persevering, because even though you're going through all that stuff, people can still hang out and have a conversation. Rothschilds owns the banks. I will smoke the cigarette because we got 8 votes. We should do a poll at some point in terms of what I need, it's 15%, so I'm going to have to go back and charge it in a second. I'm still going to keep going because it's going till we die. I'm not talking about YouTube necessarily, but it's just, whatever this is that I'm going through, I'm going to go through it till the end. I don't really like just giving up. And I have a lot of songs I want to make, even if it's too late and the world has kind of moved on from the songs and how meaningful they would be. I still want to finish them. I still want to write my story and my stories. I went to the gym, I snuck into the gym, and it just seems like a Truman Show. It seems like everything has gotten so obvious that sometimes I think I'm the only real soul in the experience. Like, it gets so obvious out here. like they're like caricatures of people. Is a caricature when they blow up the face out of proportion? I see people with like huge caricatures. Like when I was 22, I used to like the way that I used to talk to myself when I was lonely, and I would just kind of joke around with myself. The other night, I was alone out in the woods, and then someone showed up and was just word for word, verbatim, exactly what I was saying 2 years ago. And he was like wearing tons of like cartoons on his clothes, and the cartoons were like the ones I grew up with. It was like the embodiment of a part of my identity that I had left behind and I had grown past, and I was able to like literally move past it on my mission to go somewhere else. I was able to like leave that part of me behind literally, and then move into the new version of myself with like gratitude and appreciation of who I am now. I was able to see the difference, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't physically in my reality outside, because I don't really pay attention to the inside that much anymore because of all the stuff that I'm going through. I let it come to me in waves. So stuff like that happens all the time, and I have people that walk right up to me, and I think that they're an energy vampire, and then they try to hang out with me. They get really close. They do all the energy vampire stuff. I feel like they took all my power away, and then they ask if I need a light, and then they light my cigarette, and then the lighter is a picture of fangs and blood coming off of the teeth, and it says, "Bite me." And then I look up at him, and he gave me the "fuck you" look, like you should have known. And then he leaves, but he leaves behind a Irish shirt for me to take with me if I want to. So I don't read a lot of the Bibles. I don't read a lot of the Torah, the Quran, the Sumerian tablets, the Emerald tablets, the Tao Te Ching, the I don't know, the book, not the Book of Mormon, but the Book of Mormon. I don't really read it. I don't have access to it. I could download a Bible app and do it, but my mental bandwidth is usually spent fighting crows for dominance and trying to inherit the kingdom of heaven, and then go on a rampage through different communities and try to give them the good vibes and fight. And it's a lot of single moms that are attracted to me, and then the men get very mad because they can see what's happening. And I'm not trying to make it that way, but being out in the woods, I don't really have any social skills, but I have a lot of skills that deal with fighting for emotional energy. So it's a very vivid and powerful experience when I rampage as a Sagittarius through the store. So of course I'm turning heads, and then a song will play that's like, keep turning head. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do this. And a song plays that's like head turner or something like that. I'm worried about I need a car because it's cold. I don't want to regress to the life I left behind. So I know that for anyone watching, dirt bikes, I think you can take them on sidewalks, like a motorized bike, and they get 80 miles per gallon. So how much do you really need to carry around with you in a day? You can just have a backpack, and you can even put like a big cargo thing on the back of it for all the stuff that you might need, like repair stuff or just what I carry in a day. Like my bag could fit on the back, and I could even they make now these like very strong steel frames to put on the back that you can latch a big dog onto the back, and you could ride with a big dog behind you. That's safe, as safe as you can be on a motorcycle. But I mean, if I was in a car, that dog isn't seat belted anyway, so he might actually be safer. No, he might not have to jump off. If we crashed, the dog would follow the motorcycle, so I'd have to figure that out. But for whatever reason, I could transport a big dog even, and all the stuff I need, and a canvas tent, and have a gun on my back, and a gun on like a BB gun on my back, and then a real gun on my hip, and then have everything I need. And then 8 miles per gallon, where 20 miles or $20 can get you, let's say $30 can get you 800 miles. $30 could get you 800 miles. That's $90 if I wanted to go across the country. For $100, I could take a dog and a bike and all my things for $100, plus whatever repairs might be on the way. and I can make it across the country. Whereas my addiction is escapism. I get overwhelmed by the present moment, and I try to hide. Do you guys feel like as soon as you have a cell phone, it draws all your attention away from yourself, and you seem to lose all sense of being grounded? And it becomes almost like if you're walking through the woods, all that attention that would be focused on feeling peace, a big chunk of that gets diverted to your phone? Or is that just any type of addiction that you have? Like if I had a pack of cigarettes versus if I didn't have a pack of cigarettes. But I feel the same way if I had a house. I feel like if I had a house, a huge part of my identity and my being able to be fully in the present moment, a lot of that would be left behind, because I would be having like a wife and kids at the house and a dog and a house in a driveway. Versus if I didn't have any of those things, that frees up so much that I could focus on what's happening right now. Which is why I don't want a car, because it's so much cooler to be able to ride my bike and not have to worry that I'm leaving anything behind. Everything that I have is with me. Everything that I own is with me. Which is the only reason why I wouldn't get a van, and I would get like a propane heater and a bike. The other thing is that I need to get buff, get money, get purpose, and start living the life that I say I'm capable of, if I ever want the type of relationships that I had when I was 17. If I ever want that type of love back, I think I can't be considered a schizophrenic bum. I'm only going to find people that resonate with that lifestyle. I won't be able to be matched up and be able to live and have those same experiences. I definitely need to get buff, just because the world's getting more violent. This 16-year-old from a small town in Vermont was telling me about how he stabbed somebody 2 weeks ago. And he's a normal dude that plays sports. He was exactly like the kind Vermont kids that I grew up with, except hood culture and Instagram has taken him so much down the wrong road that they're having orgies, they're doing drugs, and they're killing people. They're literally these kids are killing each other. And it's so normalized for them. They don't even I had to educate them for 5 minutes about how that came from hood culture, because they were literally trapped in a 1 block by 1 block radius. And all the things that people think are cool was the suffering that they had to endure, the skills that they had to develop to make it out of being trapped in a 1 block by 1 block radius where the people have booze and guns and no education, and probably force-fed by some type of 5G tower, certain mindsets and vibes as like a social experiment or cultural programming to eventually take to the mainstream. That now all the kids are experiencing it, like they bred the worst parts of society and then they unleashed it. And the kids aren't looking for leaders to explain to them. They're not looking for OGs. They're just taking it at face value. So now these kids are killing each other, and they're doing all this stuff that people in the hood had to do just to survive. And they're normalizing it, adopting it like that's how life should be. And it's terrible. And they don't see anything wrong with it, because they don't even know it's different. And it's not like the projects where they're like, it's normalized because that's what they're seeing on an everyday basis. It's just like a part of their curriculum. It's just like, that is how the world, I don't even know how to describe it if you can't see the duality of it from both sides. But it's definitely getting worse. And it seems like the further I go into white America, the worse it actually is. Because they all have money. And then when you have money and comfort, You have more mental bandwidth to think about these types of things. So when I go to like Stowe, which is the next place I'm going, it's 10 miles north. That's the richest part of Vermont. Everyone there was like staring at each other like this in their cars, and they were leaning out the window and doing their hand like this, like, like in this huge energy battle. I could literally see the tops of their heads twitching because they had the mental bandwidth out of survival to philosophize, and they were still fighting each other for energetic dominance. It was the most paranoid place I'd been to, just walking through the grocery store. Everybody that was rich and driving Broncos were like the vicious, like, stomping around like complete robots, staring each other down in the parking lot. And then I sat there on the bench. Let me make sure I have charge. Okay, I have 13. I sat here on the bench like this. I don't have anything to prop it up with. But I sat here on the bench, and I was waiting for them. And when they looked at me and they tried to do the energy battle, I went full Vivek's cabin mode, and they couldn't touch me because I had the embodiment of nature, which does not care about all these made-up things that you're worried about. I had the real, and I showed them that, and then they got one guy got out of his car, one guy was like reaching for his gun, one guy was doing, and I was just sitting here. One guy stomped or did the thing where he literally got out of the car and stomped around, pointing at things and screaming at his wife. They all lost it. And I said, when the world ends, you're going to need our skills and we're going to need your money in order for all of us to survive. So stop pretending to be anything more than a monkey. Sit down and play some cards with your local crackhead, and I think you both can learn a lot about each other. But if you keep us in this set of diversity, all you're going to do is get overrun with the people that you ostracized to live your exclusive lifestyle. You are suffering because of what's in the Bible. And I said it so a whole parking lot full of rich pricks could hear. And a lot of them revved their engines and sped off angry. A lot of the younger 20-year-old white guys, mid-20s, got really mad about it, and they drove off in their nice cars. Dude, seeing what rich white relationships are like is insane. Millennial white wealthy relationships are nuts. They went outside the Capitol building, they set up cornhole, which is like beanbag toss, where you throw beanbags into the hole far away. They played death metal and they blasted it. When the guy's girlfriend showed up, and she was a very pretty girl, he didn't say like, what's up, I love you, hug you, pick you up, hang out, sit together, ask her about her day like they do when you're on the street. When you're on the street, you like do a whole check-in about the day and you get exactly where the girl is at, exactly where she wants to go. You love each other and you care about each other. This guy was like, hey babe, are you ready to play? But he said it in such like they have this weird aggressive tone, like they're probably the way that they would order slaves around. And that like higher level dominance game where you have to be in control of everything all the time in a different way than the natural aggression that you have for fighting to survive on the street and out in the woods. So I would see that when I went to Saranac Lake, and I stole a canoe and I rode around Saranac Lake for a day on the 4th of July. I would see the way the rich kids talk to each other, and just constantly keeping the girls in awareness that they had the money and they had the car and they had everything, so they need to shut up and just listen. And that wasn't like the crackheads on the street that'll say like, if you don't shut up, I'm going to beat you in front of all these people if you don't stop. That was saying like, you're not allowed to have fun because that might make me feel invalidated. Not, you need to focus and shut up because it's making my life harder and we have places we need to go. Do you see the difference? That the more money that these kids have, it seems like the less out of touch they are, and all they're trying to do is make sure that their pride is cemented and overarching, and that everyone else that doesn't have as much money as them has to be inferior. Status. There's probably a better way to put that, but I see a lot of that the closer I'm getting to Stowe and Montpelier, where all they do is power games. All they're doing is power games, status and power games, to try to suck up as much spiritual wealth as possible. And they'll do things like blare their songs right in the middle of everything, and they played cornhole for maybe 2.5 minutes, and then they unpacked everything, which took them 5 minutes. They played for 2.5 minutes. I felt them steal all the energy from the town. They did their literal ritual that they were looking to do. Then as soon as they got all the power and I felt weakened, everyone in the whole place felt weakened, then they immediately packed up, got in their nice cars, and left. They're playing a game that they're allowed to play because they're rich. And that pisses me off, man, because our governor is of the same caliber they are. Our governor is only appealing to those people, and he only cares about those people. He said that anyone else is uneducated and not worth investing time or money into helping. So he raised the rent by $1,000, and he's kicking out multi-generational Vermont families that have been here longer than his family has been here. He's kicking everybody out and replacing them with people that are just as rich as he is. And he's turning it into an exclusive amusement park specifically for the rich people. And the poor people, he has so much money that he's just shoving them in motels to get them off the street long enough that tourism can stay functioning to keep the economy going. And then he doesn't care if they have kids. He doesn't care if whatever they're doing in life. He'll just throw them out when it's time. So there's a lot, I think 100 different families that had kids that weren't able to make rent and wanted to remain in Vermont, that wound up homeless, trying to figure things out. That he said, if you freeze, you freeze. It's not my problem. I'm going to go home to my mansion. And then he had the audacity to call me an Injun. I met him face to face this year at the peak of my suffering, outside the Vermont Tech Community College, at the top of that Randolph place, about a mile up from Vivek's cabin. And I was singing I was practicing how to do the throat singing. Hey, I don't want the police to be called, so I won't do it fully. I was practicing channeling energy and making the birds get hyper by it. How to boost nature and make the birds feel comfortable enough that they would surround me and start singing. And they would dance. There was all these dances where they would fly around me in unison together with what I was doing, and they were helping the process of whatever I was doing, channeling into songs and then singing outward with love and energy that I picked up from living amongst the trees for years. Whatever I picked up and I was learning how to do spiritually, the birds were helping. So I just walked casually through the empty college campus, and when I felt the overweight alcoholic security guards hit me with the bad vibes, I took oak branches, or the evergreen branches, the pines, and I would kind of brush my back because I saw someone do it in a video. I went through a day of watching where the indigenous content creators are at, because I know whatever I think about grows, and whatever reason my 33 life path, the things that I want the world to see come out. Like I had all those Caseys that were all embodiments of me: Casey Rocket, Kurt Kaz, Kai Cenat, Kendrick Curry, the Kansas City Chiefs, all these KCs that were different aspects of who I was when I was 17, before all the trauma. I got to re-experience myself through others a year after I'd asked God over and over and over again to give me who I was through other people. And so I knew I had this connection that what I thought about gets shared with the masses. So I spent 6 months, all I did was think about indigenous culture, try to pick up the teachings, try to pick up the ancestral wisdom, and learn with my ability to empathize and really understand where people are coming from and what they're saying, to see the systematic, complex information behind it and try to channel it into my songs. And now I'm kind of this is harvest season, right, where all the crops are being harvested, the leaves are falling off the trees. This is when I would get the return on investment. And now my For You page is full of up and coming rising star indigenous people that somehow found a niche, got into it, and they're expressing exactly what I wanted to be expressed, which is oftentimes they take a nice small town kid that wants to be indigenous and they're teaching him different skills, and they're making it into funny TikTok content shorts about teaching my white friend how to be indigenous. And then the skills that the skills that the indigenous kid is teaching the white kid is the stuff that I learned out in the woods, all the stuff that I picked up myself having to go through that big long journey because I wanted to find a better sense of how to be in the world. All that wisdom is now getting to the masses at 11111. So I don't know what next year will bring. Usually I can see ahead for the creative style. It seems more like everyone, if you guys are artists, you all have color schemes. You have certain colors you align with more than others. You have a specific kind of flavor or style to your creativity. Next year will be the most heightened version of that, whatever story you've been living inside in this cyclical nature since 2020 of your experiences where you're going through. This last few months, this year of the dragon building up to the year of the snake, will be this big build up and culmination of what you've been going through. And then the year of the snake, for most people, I think, will be just riding the highs of everything that you've done. It'll be kind of like that blissful moment, that moment of clarity, and you'll just kind of, it'll be a very simplified version of everything that you did, where you're able to utilize your wisdom in the perfect way. So for whatever, I think it seems to me like it's going to be a lot of different areas. Like I felt 2022 was specifically going to be green and orange. I felt like 2024 was specifically going to be heightened versions of all the different colors of the zodiac. So the blue, things like Pisces were going to be very vividly blue. And it turns out that's the water. That's what the water element does. I didn't know that was water cat, and it was a water year. So, and then the year that I thought it was going to be orange and green was the tiger. And then this year, I didn't know I knew it was going to be deeper colors, like a more grayish sense of everything. It's going to be a more balanced, but more vivid, not experienced, but kind of condensed, a deeper connection. Not deeper as in like deeper down underwater, but deeper, like more compact together. And then that's the wood element. So we have one more year of the wood element. And that's a wood snake. And then we have the fire horse, the pale horse, right? Isn't that what all the revelations, all the different predictions about the end of the world talks about the lion dragons? And then we just passed the tiger, cat, dragon years. And now we're approaching the snake, the serpent. And then it starts over again with the fire horse. So I'm sure there's tons of symbolism written in whatever was going on 2,000 years ago. I also want to say that if you look back at all the major hurricanes that happen on the East Coast, they're all showing up at the same times. Every major hurricane that the East Coast has ever had is around it was exactly September 26th. And then it got changed when TikTok blew up and started identifying it. When TikTok realized that all the hurricanes were happening on the same exact days, suddenly Wikipedia changed and they randomized all the dates. Like these hurricanes that were happening 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that were recorded. Suddenly the dates changed when TikTok found out that there was a pattern in the hurricanes. that the hurricanes were showing up on the 26th, which is a karmic day. September 26th would be Libra season, which is about balance, and then karma, which is about receiving what you deserve based off what you put out. So for the East Coast to get hit, and then I lost everything, but then I woke up from that hurricane, and it's like all of my mental illness had cleared up, and I was back. It was like I had completely shifted, and all of my problems had kind of washed away, literally. On a karmic 8 day that happens cyclically. So for me, if the earth is a conscious entity, it makes sense that volcanoes are just like pimples. Like it sprouts up because it has shit that it needs to get out. It's purging. So the volcano erupts, and then the smoke comes and it clears out what it needs to clear out. And then it starts over again. It freshens itself. It makes the hurricane systematically because it's going through a wipe. It's refreshing the arena, or just the garden. I know when I was in the woods and I wasn't near water at all, and the trees would start to be in a drought, the whole forest started to put out this dry, stale vibe. And then within a day, there would be clouds showing up, and the clouds would be delivering the rain to the trees. And the forest would, it's dramatic, but the forest would rejoice. It would be this glorious thank you, because the trees got what it needed. And then that night, I could feel everything resting and growing and waiting. And then as soon as the sun came up, everything that the trees used the water for would sprout up again. There would be new bugs suddenly. The animals would come out and the whole food chain would activate again. It was like the factory was pumping again. Everything was going. All the vibes were so much more vivid, and there was pain and joy, and all the experiences that were happening in the forest would come alive again. And I'd have all these different insane spiritual experiences out there that I didn't really talk about. I went back through and listened to a bunch of indigenous people talk about their experiences with different cryptids out in the woods, what their tribes would call these certain things that American society has demonized or has just completely wiped from having us believe that it's true. And I think from what I've seen, yeah, you can ask me any question you want, man. It's just whenever I get done ranting, I look down and offer what I can. I'll tell you, I saw this thing that I can only describe as, okay. So I'll tell you first these two different experiences that I heard about on YouTube. It's kind of the only real, like if you look up skinwalker stories and you look up people that are telling the truth that are on reputable podcasts, that the general consensus is that the guy's telling the truth, and it seems like the way the guy's talking, it's not like he's selling you anything. He has nothing to gain from it. He seems traumatized when he talks about it. And from everything that I've seen, I believe him. And the stuff that they're saying lines up with what I've experienced. The way that they talk about how nature works, the way that they guided me through the story is the same way that I experienced the story living out here. And what it was, one guy was a exotic animal specialist in Florida, so he dealt with gators, and he dealt with like just the stuff that other people aren't really trained to deal with. So he would leave Florida and go to places like if a alligator had moved into like a golf course or a country club up north a little bit further in Georgia or somewhere that doesn't really have it. I don't remember the other pets that he named, but I think they were like snakes and other things. And he said he went out and he was out in the woods for like a couple days. And he turned around. This might not be his story, but they're both interchangeable. It was one or the other. He said he sees these things with glowing eyes, and they're usually hunched over and they're walking on all fours. And he says they don't move around like animals. They move around like insects, the way that insects are like jumpy, very stagnant, very twitchy. They move like giant bugs, but the bug is like the slimy skin, and there's like patches of fur that are hanging off the skin, and it's constantly morphing, and sometimes it has a face, sometimes it doesn't, and it's constantly like the way a chameleon changes colors, this thing changes forms, and the forms are probably the same way that if you imagine right now, just imagine like a Yeti, and then imagine the Yeti, all the skin falls off, and then the Yeti grows scales, and now the Yeti is scaly, and then the Yeti changes those scales back into fur over time. Just like say like a 2-hour long process where it like dissolves and then reforms the protein molecules very quickly. Molting and unmolting to fit the environment. But it's like a bug type thing. Like an old, because bugs have been around way longer than we have, and way longer than any animal's ever been. Bugs have been around, and bugs will be around for a very long time after us. So it's just like they're saying it's probably like an evolved bug thing out in the forest. And they say it has glowing eyes, that when it looks at you, you freeze like sleep paralysis, and then it does what it needs to do, and then it leaves. Sometimes they say that it's a little bit curious, like younger ones or different ones. You have like the same moment where you're like, I've never seen a human like you. And then you're like, I've never seen anything like that. So they're both so foreign to each other. There's like this, the same way that I look at a deer and the deer looks up and we look at each other for a couple minutes, and then I try to find a way to empathize with it. Sometimes it comes closer, sometimes it runs away. He had the same experience with that thing, and then it left. And then all the other stories are just different examples of that, but the thing looked different, but the experience was the same. It had glowing eyes, and it stared you down, and you froze in place. Whatever it did, when it looked at you, it shot like something at you that froze your electronic, like the electromagnetism in your body. When your brain sends signals to your body to move, when it looks at you, it just disrupts that, and you freeze in place. So I know, spending time out in the forest, I would freeze all the time. The more I got into the forest, and the more that I felt like there was going to be some type of big spiritual encounter, I would freeze in place the same way they froze in place, and I would hear something walking around in the forest on all fours and jumpy. But I thought it was jumpy, like it was in and out of reality. But it could just be that the thing skirted off quietly, jumped very quickly, like a bug, like a grasshopper. And that's not, and I didn't know that's what it was. But this is the part I'm talking about. When I was in Vivek's cabin, I had a dream that there was a spirit that was kind of like a ancestor probably, or like a father figure. Something that was like, it felt responsible for me, but it didn't feel like we were that close. And it was standing in Vivek's cabin to the left, so my tent was in the far left in the back. And there was an entryway, there was a window right above it, an open window and an open door. And then there was the bottom part at the bottom of the small steps. And that Vivek was in the nest up there on the right. So I guess if you're looking towards the door, I'm on the right side and Vivek's on the right side. But if you're coming into the building from that moving door, that sliding door in the front, I'm on the left side. So it was standing in Vivek's area. No, it was standing on the other side of Vivek's area, on the left, where that doorway that I would lead, where I was raking all the trails. It was standing on that side. And then I got out from the tent. It was like brighter than the world has ever been. Like the sun was shining so bright. It was almost, there was like a white hue around everything. And I looked at this thing that was taller than me, like it was a giant. It seemed kind of humanoid, but no skin. It was dark, like a dark being, but it seemed like it was conscious. Like my old sleep paralysis demon had gotten sophisticated, and it wasn't tormenting me. It was just there. And then that thing guided my attention I was like, I'm supposed to be looking at something, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking at. Why am I here? And then it guides my attention down to the ground. And then right in front of me, like right here, was this kind of like, It looked like a stink bug with no wings, like the shape of a stink bug, but more of like an hourglass shape. And it had 4 long black legs, but the legs were just like hairs, almost like the way that it moved. Very thick hairs, like not like talons, but just like one long extremity that was like a black leg, I guess, maybe like a spider's leg, but it didn't, instead of having joints, it was like fluid, like a snake motion, how a snake can move around. It was like like a tentacle, but the tentacle was just a long, sleek, black thing. Like, I guess if you could move a hair, it would be like moving a hair, but a really long one, and it had 4 of them. And then on the hairs were tons and tons of deer, and the deer were stuck on the hair. And I could tell that the deer were regular size, but it was showing me a small version of whatever this thing is to make me more easily comprehend what I was looking at. And it had 2 long antennas, and it had a face, but it wasn't like a human face, it was like a bug face. It had like the dark black eyes. And then it had all these different animals from the forest that were attached to it on the hairs. And then it came closer to me, and it took its antennas and it wrapped around my leg. And I don't know if that was it saying, I love you, or like whatever, like a hug. I didn't know if it was hugging me, or if it was trying to attach to me, or if it was trying to like eat me. There was no, like with animals and people, there's an intention. You can feel the emotional state behind them. There's like a coagulated coalescence of vibes and intentions and like energies that are guiding everything that they do. This bug was just like an automaton, whoop, and it wrapped around my leg. I felt like that was it hugging me, but I also know that it was nothing that thing was emitting off of that I was picking up on. I was just making it seem that way. I wanted it to be hugging me. Never saw it again for a month. Then I went through that journey where I went to jail. Then I spent like a month down in the town. I spent a couple weeks down in town. I didn't go back to Vivek's cabin. Then I spent the hurricane out in Randolph Center, which is a mile north, up the hill, up to the top of the mountain. And I lived out in that field, in that shack. And then I got trespassed and arrested and went to jail, and went back up there and lived by the cemetery and stayed at the top. And then I went back to Vivek's cabin after I did all this huge growth, and I went through a ton of different stuff where I wasn't able, hiding in that shack wasn't the same as when I was surviving the winter. It was now like I'd expanded so much that I was too big for that small area. It wasn't comfortable for me anymore. I'd grown past it. But I was really tired. It was about to rain. It was cold. I was sick from being outside. So I set up a tent really quickly, and I just hid back in the den. And then I woke up, and it was the most lifeless I'd felt in my entire life, where I felt completely empty. My entire spirit, all the things that I thought were myself, all the growth that I had just went through, all like the vibes that I was carrying, the different emotions that I was holding on to, that feeling of being satiated because I knew I had food in my stomach, any type of rest, any feeling that I had at all, everything that was me, I woke up to it being ripped out and attached, and I could see that thing in the top of my mind, like floating above my head in like the dream realm when I was half awake. It was floating above me in a tree. It had climbed a tree, whatever it was. It wasn't physical, but it was there, and it was in the trees, and it had just completely ripped me out. And then I realized like 2 years ago, if you look up Gemini Home Entertainment, it's a good video by Nexpo if you want to get freaked out and you also have a couple hours to eat some snacks and watch a video. It's a really good series. Check out Gemini Home Entertainment, and then the Nexpo has a video where he put them all together and he summarizes the end of it. NEXPO. But in that, it talks about these alien things that look pretty much just like what I experienced, and he said that they said that it's transmitted down from a different planet, and then they get into nature, and then they sneak in at nighttime, and they embed themselves in the community, like when I talk about all these tethers that I'm feeling, before we ever felt anything about the tethers, there was that video that some independent content creator made back when the Mandela tapes were coming out, the Mandela catalog, talking about that there was people used to sacrifice people to these old bug aliens that would in exchange not come for them, so they were able to not be attached to the nature, like all the different animals had gotten attached to these tentacle monster things that were growing, and they started off as little bugs, and then they call them wood crawlers, and then they seep in with tentacles, and they come into the community, and they get into the back of your mind, and then they start to control everyone, and that they become fake people. And the way that those fake people were acting in the videos is exactly how I'm seeing what I call fake people acting now. It was like a couple years before it happened, we got a warning. And all the kids saw it blew up with children on the internet. The same way Five Nights at Freddy's blew up about hollow husks that once housed tormented children's souls. Then tons of kids used to come up to me in 2020 and be like, I think we're all FNAF animatronics. And I'm like, I have no idea, but I know that I'm a soul in a body. So that's that. I don't know. I think skinwalkers might be wood crawlers. And I think that, like, I definitely, the only other times I can remember where I felt that drained and lifeless, before that, I had dreams that giant tapeworms were coming in from the city, and they were coming into small towns, and they were latching onto my stomach, and then I'd wake up feeling controlled and puppeted. So I learned how to escape and fight back against that, and that's like violence ensued immediately. Sometimes when I pass by certain people, I get a bad... Bruce Lee, are you still in the chat? Sometimes when I pass by certain people, I get a bad smell from them, even though they're well-dressed. So that's... You're coming to the awareness that your senses are picking up information, and everything is producing information. Like musks, how different people have different smells when they sweat, different cultures smell differently, different animals smell differently. All the coagulated information, that energy that they've taken in, processed, co-created with, turned into something else, is living in their body. They're a container housing that energy and information. With that, there are probably entities also that are attaching to people and kind of sticking onto their skin, because the same way all these skins are designed to pick up information. Our skin is taking in information from the sun. Our nose is taking in information. Our taste buds are taking in information. And then that goes into our body with electrical signals, and our brain produces feelings. It produces emotions. It has an understanding of that. So if we are like manifestation machines, we're projecting out the things that we choose to project out. Like, we have stuff that we're feeding constantly. That's like where you put your focus. That's why I was so obsessed as a child. Like, my most fun thing was creating structures and mindsets that would guide people towards a better life. That has a certain frequency, and that frequency has a certain taste and a certain smell. That synesthetics, people with synesthesia, they all blend together. Like, I have synesthesia. I see a smell as a note on a piano. I see a smell or a taste as a song, and I can recreate that with different instruments, exactly what I tasted, because my experience is all blended together. And that might be being an 11 also. It could be the Aquarius in me, because most of the people that I see that talk about having that are Aquarians. Billie Eilish puts it the exact way that I put it, and Billie Eilish is a Sagittarius Aquarius, just like I am. And the stuff that we produce, the songs that we make, seem pretty similar. The vibes seem to be the same. We talk about the same stuff. So when you pick up on a smell, in Vermont, at least, where the frequencies are so high and the connection to nature is so vivid, but it's not like New York where there's a higher level where people are more focused on the aggressive side of everything. In Vermont, it's a more vivid experience for everybody. In Vermont, especially in the year of when it was water years, I could be sitting in this park and other people that happen to be 11s, either 11 life paths or born on the 11th or 29th or the 2nd or the 20th. It was mostly those people that had that experience, but we could just sit here and then think about wanting to get a vibe check of what they were like, and all of us at once would be hit with that smell. We would like inquisitively look out, or like we would think about somebody or somebody would think about us, and we would literally get hit with their vibes when they looked over at us, the same way that people kind of walk in front of my face when I'm meditating. And all of a sudden, all of our processes, our spiritual and physical our senses would sense that, and it had a smell, it had a taste, it would stick with us, and we'd have to like find a way to brush it off. That's why the indigenous use sage to clear you, because all these bad stuff that you're smelling when you pass by somebody are probably what they call bad spirits, whether they're actual spirits or they're just like remnant energies of something they had gone through. Like, I know I carried a deer into the woods yesterday when I rode my bike down to Montpelier. There was a big deer on the road that was bloated, and I picked it up off the road and carried it down a hill into the woods. And that smell stayed with me all day. And when I talked to people, I could see that they could kind of smell it. Even though I had wiped and I went into the water and I like sprayed, that energy was stuck on me because I breathed it in. I processed that scent. So that scent was in my peripheral, I guess. So then I just convert that smell with different tools that I've developed fighting off against police, cops, creeps, cunts, and crackheads, and shitty family members, and then gang stalkers and stuff like that. All the tools that I learned to try to convert what they were projecting onto me, which I developed really from being in DCF. What's up, bro? Good, man. I'm live.
Oh shit.
No, I got you. What you trying to get into, though?
Want to see something cool?
Sure. All right, I'm on an adventure, guys. Peace.
Nah, you can keep it. I mean, you can keep it on if you